let us have the function f of x being 1 over 4th root of x. We need to find the derivative of this function. And before we calculate the derivative, we'll change the way this function looks. And so we state that the 4th root of x is x to 1/4 power. And then 1 divided by x to 1/4 power is the same as x to the negative 1/4 power. Now that we have this function, we can add x to some power. We can easily calculate its derivative. So it's going to be derivative of x to negative 1/4 power. By the power rule, that's negative quarter times x to negative 1/4 minus 1. And that simplifies to negative 1/4 x to the power negative 5/4. Let's have a look on this function. We have f of x being 3 divided by x cubed plus 1 over 7x to the 5th. And eventually we're going to work on finding the derivative of this function. Before we do that, you'll notice that we can split each fraction into the product of two fractions. We get 3 over 8 times 1 over x cubed plus 1 over 7 times 1 over x to the 5th. And each 1 over x to such power is x to some negative power. So we'll arrive at 3 over 8 times x to negative 3rd plus 1/7 times x to negative 5th power. That's the much easier function to find derivative of. Now, if we do the derivative of this function, it's the derivative of 3/8 x to the negative 3rd plus 1/7 x to negative 5th. By the derivative of the sum of two functions, this splits into the derivative of the first term plus the derivative of the second term. And then by the constant multiple rule, we can factor out 3/8 and work on derivative of x to negative 3rd here. And then factor out 1/7 and work on the derivative of x to negative 5th. And then by the power rule, this works out to be 3/8 times negative 3 times x to negative 4th power plus 1/7 times negative 5 times x to negative 6th power. After simplification, we arrive at negative 9/8 x to negative 4th power minus 5/7 times x to negative 6th power. Let's work on this problem. Let function f of x be 5x to the 4th times square root of x plus negative 2 over x squared times square root of x. We are going to find derivative of this function eventually. First of all, we'll simplify this function. Square root of x is x to 1/2 power. So the function looks like 5x to the 4th times x to 1/2 power plus negative 2 over x squared multiplied by x to 1/2 power. After that, we combine x to the 4th and x to 1/2 into x to the sum of the exponents. And likewise, in denominator of this function, we get x to the power 2 plus 1/2, which in turn simplifies to x to the power 9/2, that's 4 plus 1/2, and x to the power 5/2 in the second fraction, in the denominator of the second fraction. And then we bring x on top in this second term, and we arrive at 5 times x to 9/2 minus 2 times x to negative 5/2. That's an expression we're going to take derivative of. So for the derivative of this function, we're taking derivative of the difference of two terms, and we're splitting that into difference of two derivatives, and then individual constants could be brought out. So we're essentially looking on 5 times derivative of x to 9/2 minus 2 times derivative of x to negative 5/2, which by power rule is 5 times 9/2 times x to 9/2 minus 1. minus 2 times negative 5 halves times x to negative 5 halves minus 1, which after simplifying all the products and differences, we get 45 over 2 times x to the 7 halves power plus 5 times x to the negative 7 halves. And now let's work on this problem. We have the function f of x being square root of 9x, and we need to find f prime. So we proceed by, first of all, splitting the square root of 9x into square root of 9 times square root of x. In this problem we can figure out what square root of 9 is, but that's not the main concern. The concern is that square root of x is x to 1/2 power. Now, if we're gonna do derivative of this, we're gonna have f prime is equal to derivative of square root of 9 times x to 1/2 power. And square root of 9 is a constant, so by constant multiple rule, we factor it out and work on derivative of x to 1/2 power, which by the power rule is 3 times 1/2 times x to the 1/2 minus 1 power, and that simplifies to 3/2 times x to the negative 1/2 power. We have the function h of x equals 7 minus 2x cubed. We need to compute h prime at 3. First of all, we will compute h prime at x. So h prime at x is equal to the derivative of 7 minus 2x cubed. Then derivative of the difference of two terms is the difference of individual derivatives. So we get derivative of 7 minus derivative of 2x cubed. And we see that derivative of 7 is 0. And in the second term, this 2 in front of x squared could be factored by the constant multiple rule. And we get minus 2 times derivative of x cubed. After that we get 0 for the first term, minus 2 times 3x squared, that's the derivative of x cubed. 3 comes down and you decrease 3 by 1. And that's the final result, negative 6x squared. And that's the derivative of h. That's the formula for the derivative of h. Then we need to find h prime at 3. So we take the formula and put x equals 3 into it. So h prime at 3 is negative 6 times 3 squared. That is negative 6 times 9. That is negative 54. And the second part of that question asks to find an equation of tangent line to the curve, to the same curve, 7 minus 2x cubed, at the point 3, negative 47. So since we already did derivative, we know that the slope of the tangent line is the value of the derivative at 3, and we already know that it's negative 54. The problem gives us the point 3, negative 47. So we can use point-slope equation to figure out the equation of tangent line. If we put all the numbers in, we'll get y minus negative 47 is equal to negative 54 times x minus 3. Now we can simplify this and get y plus 47 is equal to negative 54x plus 162. And then we can solve for y and get that y is equal to negative 54x plus 115. That seems to be the answer.